Hello and welcome to the Counselor Professional Development Series presented by College Week Live. My name is Marjorie Paul and you are tuned into the live broadcast of I'm Ready for College but I Can't Find My Backpack. Today I will be discussing executive functioning strategies and key areas of support that can help students with learning differences such as ADHD or on the autism spectrum and really help them as they transition through college. Please note that in order to receive hours towards CEU, you must complete the brief survey at the end of this presentation. Now, before we get started, I would like to remind you that we will be receiving questions throughout this presentation. You can send me your questions anytime during the program through the box in the lower left-hand side of your screen. I will answer the questions at the end of the PowerPoint presentation. This presentation, I'm Ready for College but Can't Find My Backpack, was originally developed by Dr. Michael McManman, and Dr. McManman is the founder of the College Internship Program, CIP. And CIP helps to support young adults who have learning differences or on the autism spectrum as they go through college or starting their career. About 30 years ago, Dr. McManman started the program for students with learning differences. And then it was about 12 years ago he realized he had Asperger's, and since then has opened up a number of other centers. There are currently 6 centers of CIP throughout the country in New York, Massachusetts, Florida, Indiana, and then 2 in California. The program is for young adults 18 to 25 or 26, and it's generally at least a year-long program. We also have 2 summer programs, one for high school students and one for beyond high school students. Once again, my name is Marjorie Paul. I'm your presenter. And I joined CIP in 2008, and I'm currently the National Outreach Coordinator. And I've really had the privilege of working with some of the students as they are ambassadors. And I've also worked with some of the students who have graduated from our program, and they are what we call alumni ambassadors. My professional experience includes working as an attorney for over 12 years, which I'm happy to say I don't do anymore. Also working as the director of admissions in a college, as well as developing and facilitating mentoring programs for high school students. I really do love this type of work because it's my personal mission to ensure that people have the right tools and the resources and can develop the passion so they can reach their dreams. So here we go. Executive functioning strategies for transition and success in college. Well, executive functioning is really the overarching term for management of cognitive abilities that controls and regulates actions and abilities, some of which are flexibility, organization, planning and execution, and problem solving. Now, the prefrontal cortex, the section of the brain, is sort of like the CEO of the brain, and it impacts cognitive functioning and processing. And the prefrontal cortex is really the last part of the brain to mature, and this can happen even as late as the mid to late 20s. So to be successful in college, students really need to have strong executive functioning or EF skills, which are often not well developed in the population that we work with. So students with executive functioning difficulties typically act 3 years younger than peers in one or more area of development. Now, here's some good news. Executive functioning does continue to develop into adulthood. It can be affected by physical changes in the brain, can be affected by life experiences, And direct instruction and feedback is really important for the development, and frequent reassurances are necessary. EF impacts lots of areas, including money management, academics, health and fitness, even personal relationships, and of course, work. Now, here's something that EF, executive functioning, can really help. If you have strong executive functioning skills, to engage in mental planning, to really persist to complete a task or activity, helps with organization, to self-regulate, and also to self-monitor. EF also helps pay attention, to control impulsivity, and really to transition smoothly from one task to another, and to have a sense of time. Now, here's some EF difficulties that challenge people. If somebody has problems with having strong executive functioning skills, it will challenge them to really predict what could happen next. And sometimes this can create anxiety. Also challenges people to get unstuck, to try new things, to be flexible, to concentrate, to decrease impulsivity, and challenge them in using working memory. EF difficulties also challenge people to manage and allocate time, plan ahead, organize space, help keep track of their belongings, and complete complex tasks, and can also sometimes challenge them when working in groups. Now, here's some common misconceptions. The student is L, lazy, or D, dumb. Not true. The student is being oppositional. The student is doing this on purpose to drive me crazy. May seem like it, but it's not true. If the student is drawing or doodling, then he is not paying attention. In our program, we had a young man who was actually a pretty good artist, and it was very soothing to him to actually be drawing while he was talking to people. Here's some more common misconceptions. If a student did well on an assignment or an essay yesterday, then they should be able to do the same kind of work today. And that's not necessarily true. Another common misconception is the best way for students to focus is when they are still and the room is quiet. These students need time, understanding, and support. Once again, these students need time, understanding, and support. Sometimes it helps to take an extra year to mature after high school, and this can really help with college readiness. Some of you may have heard of what's called a gap year. This can really be a huge benefit for students who learn differently, and can also help a student who is just emotionally depleted and really needs a break. We have young people come into our program while they're still in high school, and they tell me, I just can't take another class, I just need a break. A gap year or two can also be a perfect solution for students challenged by traditional classroom learning, and can allow them time to develop interest, to maybe find something that interests them, which can really boost their excitement about learning. So what we don't want to happen is to have someone look like this young woman and just be overwhelmed, and this person could really use some serious help with executive functioning. So now I'll tell you some executive functioning tips in college planning. So this is something that you can tell college students as they're entering college, and also can help with high school students. So you don't want to always focus continually on the overall picture. That can become too overwhelming. You want to get help with explicit step-by-step directions, and sometimes having it in a bulleted form can be very helpful. You want to ask for directions in writing and maybe have them send you an email, or perhaps write an email to yourself, and that will help remind you. To-do lists are very important, but they should be relatively short, with maybe 1 to 2 or 3 shorter assignments and 1 longer term assignments. So here's something that is helpful when you're in college, is to set up weekly support. Many times students have a guidance counselor or tutoring or a teacher they work with maybe 1 hour a week. So if they can, it would be helpful to have 2 half-hour sessions. This can help keep the student on track. So also want to set up appointment reminders by text or email, and then of course always to confirm the appointments, which not only helps the person you're confirming it with, but also can help remind the student. Tell students to set early deadlines, but help them empower themselves so they can actually ask for an extension if they need it. And of course, save all your work to e-files. Something else that can be really helpful is to try to build a team, have a support team, and maybe brainstorm essay topics with a favorite guidance counselor or a teacher. Expect to do the majority of the work, possibly in school or by appointment with a teacher or guidance counselor, so that they're available for support. In our program, we have study halls where all the students come in and they do their homework, but there is a staff person available for them if they have questions. And this is in addition to having one-on-one tutoring. Tell the young person to not criticize or judge themselves too harshly. Now, you want to push them to do things, but you don't want them to continually criticize and judging themselves very harshly. And just remember to choose people who are always supportive and encouraging. Now, you want to choose the strategies that work best. So you want to learn step-by-step approaches towards task completion, and use organizers, phones, computers, watches with alarms. I really like to use a Google Calendar. I can look at my week, and then it also prompts me when an appointment is coming up. So you want to use visual schedules, and I'll give you an example of a visual schedule in a minute. You also want to ask for written directions, to have them written as well as verbal, and plan and structure transition times and shifts in activities. For many of our students, the transition time can be difficult from going from one task to another. So you might want to brainstorm with the young person, what would you like to do as you proceed from one task to another? Maybe it's take a walk, maybe sit down and listen to music. Whatever works. So you want to make sure that they have those available to do when they are going from one task to another. It's also helpful to sometimes put that right into the schedule. We had a young person in our program, and we would do the weekly student schedule. You can see a copy of it now. And actually on the schedule we would put chill out time each day so that he would know this is when he does his chill out time. So here's an example of a weekly student schedule that we use in our program. So this is something that when they first come into the program is developed for them. As they transition out, then we have them start to do their own schedule and eventually do their own schedule. So this has everything on there, including activities on the weekend and their different classes. Now here is another example of the same schedule, but with pictures. So sometimes the pictures can actually help the young person remember what it is they're supposed to do. And if the young person likes to draw, then they can draw their own pictures. And this can help them, once again, remember what they're doing, but also can make it a little bit more fun. Managing time, very important. You want to segment larger tasks into chunks to make it more manageable. Use calendars and day planners, very important, and reminders on computers and smartphones. We had a young woman who would always be very nervous about making appointments, and she just realized, and I'm sure most of you also realized, that using your smartphone with the alarms and the prompts can really help you. So you want to organize monthly, weekly, as well as daily. So please don't forget to organize daily, because that can be really helpful. Also use checklist, like little to-do list. So here is an example of a to-do list. So it's got 3 relatively small items and then 1 a little bit larger, study for midterm. And I love to-do lists. In fact, if I do something that's not on my to-do list, then I will actually check it off, write it down, check it off, and it makes me feel good. So here's a little tool that you can use, and it's called a time estimation worksheet. And in fact, I'd like you to just do this right now. Just take a piece of paper, and you have 3 columns. 1 for task, 1 for estimated time, and then 1 for actual time. So what you do is you write down a task, such as after this meeting, after this presentation, you'll probably go check your emails, because I'm sure you're not checking them now. So you write down, check emails, and then just estimate the amount of time it will take. And then when you go do the actual task, write down the actual. So just take a couple of seconds, just write down a couple of tasks that you do, you know, pick up your daughter, or whatever it is you're doing, and then write down the estimated time, and then the actual time when you finish the task. So what this helps to do is to start to gauge whether you're estimating correctly. And this can help when the young person does their schedule. So if they're writing down their task to study for their biology class, 20 minutes, they estimate 20 minutes, and then they actually study for it, and it takes them 2 hours, then you can see there's a discrepancy. So they need to adjust their schedule. So it's a very simple but really handy tool. Managing space and materials, of course, very important. So we suggest creating a dedicated workspace. And what this means is in the student's apartment or in their dorm room to have everything that they work with, all their school materials, their computer, books, paper, pencils, whatever it is, all in the same place. So when they get ready to do their homework and to study, it's all there, and they're not distracted by going lots of places to look for their computer, to look for their books. So you see on the right-hand side that a really organized workspace with color-coded bins, and that's really something to shoot for. It's also important to minimize clutter. Sounds really simple, but if there's a lot of clutter in the young person's room, then it's hard sometimes for them to concentrate. So you want to make sure that you schedule cleaning and organizing at least once per week. That's really important, because if you go more than 1 week, it can really get out of control. So here's some academic tips. First of all, to go get accommodations. That's really important. Here's some study and performance strategies, such as tutorial support, that kind of thing. Maybe tape recorded lectures. Use one of those smart pens. As the student is writing, it's also recording for them. And audiobooks. Audiobooks can be really helpful. We also suggest to seek clinical intervention. And talking to a therapist or working with a therapist can really help the young person understand their complex emotions and help them start to learn who they are. Can also help with goal planning, monitoring their medication if they're on medication, and can teach techniques for helping to overcome anxiety, and such as yoga or some kind of exercise. We feel that exercise and nutrition are very important. Of course, they're important for everybody, but especially for our population. So here's some residential strategies. So we suggest having an EF, executive functioning, checklist posted on the bedroom doors. And so what that is just maybe at the door when the person leaves their apartment, it says, don't forget to check the stove, remember to turn off the lights, all those different things, so it's posted right there. Something else that can be really helpful is to take a photo of what the kitchen looks like when it's clean, or what the bedroom looks like when it's clean, and post that in the apartment. And when the young person is finished cleaning, which of course they'll be doing every week, to look at the picture and to make sure that the picture is matching up with what the room actually looks like. Something else they can do is to take photos of themselves when they're properly groomed and post it maybe next to the mirror. So when they get ready to go out, they look at the picture, and if they're not matching up with the picture, if they don't look as well groomed, then they need to continue combing their hair, whatever it is that they need to do. Here is just examples of labeling drawers, labeling closets. It can really help, and not only using the title of what's in the drawer, but also pictures. So this can help when they finish their laundry, they know where to put everything and know where everything is. So here's an example of a hygiene checklist. So it's got all the different days on there, and it's got pictures, so it can be modified where you just put the days and the young person just checks off everything they do. And it's really important to be really explicit. What happens sometimes is if you're not explicit, then the young person does what you say, but not exactly what you mean. As an example, in our program, we had a young woman whose hair looked a little dirty all the time, and so we said to her, are you cleaning your hair? Are you washing your hair? And we would go like this. And she would go, yes, I am. And we said, okay. And then maybe a week or two later, we noticed that it was still kind of dingy. And we said, are you washing your hair? And she said, yes, I am. So we said, well, show us what you do. And she said, well, I would squeeze the shampoo into my hands, and then I would wash my hair. So obviously, all she was doing was washing this part of her head. So you just really need to be explicit. Doesn't matter how smart they are, you just need to sometimes just write it all down. So what we are really trying to avoid is the room looking like this. What we'd like is, once they start picking up every week, that it looks like this. So what you want to do is to help the young person with a continuum of growth, starting with self-awareness, which can be going to therapy, or in our program we have something called reframing. It's a class they go to in the morning, helps them get set up for the day, but also what it does is the student tells the class how they're feeling, how angry they are on a scale, and this can help them figure out what is going on with them, because sometimes a student is not always aware of how they're feeling until they go through a meltdown. So we want to start with self-awareness, then move on to self-acceptance, then self-regulation, self-advocacy, which leads to, hopefully, self-determination. So I'd like to thank you. Now the following are some resources: Psychology Today, Asperger's for Dummies, of course, the college internship program, Here's some more resources just for you. And what I can do, if you have questions, please email me at mpaul@cipworldwide.org. Also, if you'd like the handouts from this presentation, email me and I will be happy to send them to you. So I wanted to see if there were any questions that people have. Here. So I'll go back to the resources, leave them up for a minute or so. Well, here's a question. What can you tell parents that will help the students get ready for college? So I actually do have a tip for that, and that comes from an educational consultant. Her name is Janie Ross. And what she says to do is to have the parents write down all the different things that they are currently doing for the students. And she suggests doing this in the summer before they go to college. This can also show how many things the parent is doing for the students, like making breakfast, laundry, all those different types of things. And then what you do is either you choose, the parents choose, or you can work with the student and say, okay, what would you like to take on? What tasks would you like to take on? Now, she suggests doing this during the summer, but you can also do it during their last year of high school. So you've got all the different things the parent's currently doing for the student, and so then you and the student figure out which ones you want to do together, and then maybe have the student do it on their own. So let's say the parents are always cleaning up the room. So for the next 2 weeks, the student will be responsible for cleaning up the room or doing their laundry or something like that. So let's see if there's any other questions. And I will go to the next resource so you can look at those. So I'm just checking for questions here. So I think I did answer the one about are the checklists available if we email. And yes, I can email you the, excuse me, I can email you, excuse me again. I can email you the handouts. And if you need anything else, just email me and tell me exactly what you need. So here's just also another tip that can help prepare students. So you want to maybe talk to the young person about how they deal with stress. How do they currently deal with stress? Because if they're still at home, they may have some more outlets. At home, of course, when they're at college, they're on their own. So maybe they do see a therapist, so if that's something they want to continue at college. But things they can do on their own, of course, are exercise and nutrition. And exercise and nutrition are just so important for everybody, but once again, really important for our particular students. So exercising 2 to 3 times a week is something we have in our program, and then once again, nutrition is really important. So let's see if there's any more questions here. Okay, well, they wanted my email, so there's my email again. And to the person who asked about specific colleges with strong programs, please send me that email, and I will be happy to try to guide you. So here is, see if there's any more questions here. So here's a question that I will attempt to answer. Tips for study and juggling priorities. How to get them to be self-directed and not just on the computer all day. So that's a really good question. And that's a struggle, and that's a struggle even in our program. But one thing we do is we do have a schedule for them, and they are to be at certain places at certain times. Something you can do if the computer is a problem, you can have the young person voluntarily give up their computer at a certain time. And you have to, of course, have the student buy into that. And then they give up their computer like at 10 o'clock or whatever it is, and then at least they're not doing it all night. They don't have their computer. Also, Laura, if you send me that question, I will do my best to give you some other answers on that. I just wanted to see if there's any other questions here. Just hang on a second, I'm looking. So here's a question. What would you recommend for their course load? 6 credits or 6 credits or more during the first marking period? Of course, it will depend on the young person. However, in our program, we do have students who are, of course, going to college, but they're generally not taking more than 1 or 2 classes. So if they are doing that gap year that I talked about, where they're not going to full-time college, then they can maybe take 1 or 2 classes. And it might be a good idea for them as they ease into college to take something that really interests them. Then they can get the idea of what it's like to go to college, because of course it's different than going to high school. So I suggest possibly 1 or 2 classes. Just seeing if there's any. So here is a question, and I will do my best to attempt to answer it. As a college guidance counselor, how best to work with parents who think their child is ready for traditional college environment when he is not yet ready? So that's a good question. What you could do is suggest the gap year. So there's a lot of gap year programs that are actually learning experiences. They can go out of the country. They can do volunteer work. You can suggest maybe easing into college by taking just 1 or 2 classes. But presenting something as a gap year can make it very interesting to the young person as well as to the family. Also, Martha, if you send me that question, I will do my best to give you even a more complete answer. Oh, here's a question. When do you intervene? How much rope do you give them? Well, that's a good question. And at least in our program, the students are following the schedule, and so they are doing things according to what has been assigned for them to do. So I think it's just a trial and error as far as how much rope to give them. You want to have a young person be able to do things on their own so that they can learn, maybe make mistakes, but learn from those mistakes. Okay, I do have one more thing that I would like you to do, and that is to just think about what happens when a student gets stuck. What are some strategies that you can use when a student gets stuck? So just write them down. So they're stuck on a problem and they can't figure it out. So what do you suggest that they do? So just write down some answers, and then I'll go over some. So this is my bonus slide. So what do you do when students get stuck? So first of all, you want to help them to remain calm. You want to identify the obstacle and maybe start with some simple things. Possibly go back a few steps. Maybe even start over. You want to take a short break. You want to maybe get opinions from others. And then you really want to get perspective and prioritize. And then you want to help them envision the completed task. Sometimes our students just can't believe that they can get through something. So help them just to envision really completing the task. We also had a young woman who just felt that she had all these balls going at the same time, all these balls going up in the air, and if she dropped one ball, then that was it. She would just shut down. She wouldn't go any further. But she did realize that if you drop one ball, that you can continue. So help the young person to realize that. So now I will see if there are any more questions here that I can actually answer. Okay, Okay, here I would like a copy of study suggestions. You are mentoring now. Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay. So I would like to thank everybody for your time and tuning in to this presentation. Now, please remember to complete the quiz at the end of the session, and this will secure your CEU contact hour. We hope you will join us again on May 13th for the next session, and the title of that is Supporting LGBT Students Through the College Admissions Process by Richard Daly of Soka University. Once again, my name is Marjorie Paul, and I'd like to thank you for joining me. If you have questions about the presentation, or once again you would like the handouts, please email me, Marjorie Paul, mpaul@cipworldwide.org. Thank you very much.